Okay, so just like with the Lamborghini, we're gonna motorize the 42125 Ferrari, but this time we are gonna use our new BuWizz motor prototypes, and we are using the BuWizz 3.0. I have two prototypes here, and we also plan to make a complete PDF instruction of the mod. So unlike the Lamborghini, we will make complete instructions because we learned a lot from that model, and I think this will be our first build with BuWizz 3.0 and motors in one. Along with the physical model, I will also be making a digital model in Lego Digital Designer, so that will allow us to play around in virtual world before we actually motorize it with physical bricks. So let's unbox it. First I'm gonna build a chassis, and then I'm gonna replicate the chassis in Lego Digital Designer. And then from there on we'll see how we can motorize the model so it's made to be motorized as strong as possible, so there are no problems. And we're also going to take the opportunity to improve on some points of the model that are not so good, but we'll see that once I build the actual model. Okay, so we finished the first section of the model, and now we're gonna go with the next one, which is bag number 2. Okay, so now that I built the basic chassis of the model, it's time to talk more about the details of the motorization. So for this model, I decided not to aim for the highest top speed, but to make this thing able to actually power slide and drift and things like that. So the basic idea is I'm gonna use the outer motor output, which is a bit slower, but it has much more torque. And if possible, I will try to connect it directly to the rear-wheel drive. Another thing we're gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to increase the front steering angle so that we have more of an angle allows for better control when drifting and power sliding and things like that. Another weak point of this model is that it's very flexible. It's not even finished, and there will be no more structural support anywhere, and this will be, of course, this will have to be improved. Also, another thing that I need to improve is that the suspension angles right now are really high. Like, this is a very high angle and it's gonna cause problems, and especially at the rear wheel drive, we want these angles to be as low as possible so that the drive axles and the steering don't have to deal with so much stress. So I'm gonna have to completely redesign the rear and possibly the front suspension. I'm not sure about the front yet, but the way the current setup is quite unacceptable. Also, the amount of play, yeah, that's not good. I'm gonna try my best to place the motor, the steering motor, as close as possible, and to have the steering angle as high as possible so I can make the model drift and power slide. So that's the basic idea. And next to do is to recreate this chassis in Lego Digital Designer. Before I continue on the next phase of the building process, I gave some thought to just how I will motorize this set. So the basic idea is the following. I will put 4 motors in the back to drive the rear wheels. They are gonna be oriented like this. Okay, so if this is the rear axle, it will go, 2 of the motors will power one side and 2 the other, and they will intersect with at the slower, the more powerful output. So this is gonna be one wheel and this will power the other wheel. In the center here, I plan to put a small motor to drive the fake engine. And regarding the steering will go between here, and the steering motor will also provide some much needed structural support because this thing bends way too much. Regarding the BuWizz, I plan to place BuWizz bricks, one here, but I will lower this thing so the BuWizz sits lower, and one will be where the passenger seat would be, to balance out the model, so it's kind of, so the weight of the left and the right side is approximately the same. Regarding the chassis and the improvements, the chassis needs a lot of work. I think this is one of the laziest design I ever saw from an official set, and it will need several improvements. First, we need to increase the steering angle if we want to do some drifts and burnouts. And to do that, we need to redesign the front suspension. We need to redesign the front suspension also to reduce the suspension angle, because currently it's very high and that might interfere with the wheels. We also need to give the wheels enough room to steer, which means that this beam and this panel here, they have to be designed differently so that the wheel doesn't touch them when it's steering at a higher angle. Like I said before, the whole chassis needs to be reinforced, which the motor will hopefully do here. And I plan to also fill all these gaps with panels and things like that to give it more structural stability, because currently it's just very weak. It's not good. Also, the rear suspension will be redesigned, so I'm gonna be using much stronger joints than these ones, and everything will be designed to be at much lower angles. So this is like currently at, I don't know, 15-20 degrees. I will try to reduce this angle, which will give us a much more efficient drive system. So there's lots of things to do, But for now I will continue building the original set so that I have some clue where everything will be heading. And we are on back 4 out of 5. So as you can see, the model is slowly getting together. And like I mentioned before, we will have to do quite a few modifications to improve this set, because currently, yeah, it's not good. But yeah, let's continue. Let's see what other challenges we have. And then once this is finished, I will rebuild it in Lego Digital Designer so we can see the best way to motorize it and to improve it, of course. Okay, so back 4. Okay, so this is the final segment of the build. So now I finished the original set, and I see that we're gonna, like I said before, we're gonna have to change a few things. One thing I will probably also change is the suspension height. It seems kind of high. Maybe I can lower it by a few millimeters. And we need some stoppers in the back because the wheel touches the rim, the mud guard before it stopped, so that's gonna have to be fixed. The front seems okay. And yeah, we're gonna increase the steering angle, so we need to get rid of this, and we need more room here. Other than that, I think it looks like there's enough space for increased angle. And maybe we can even put some LED lights in the actual headlights. Now, regarding the motor placement, so like I said, I'm planning to put 2 motors here. I mean 4 motors here for drive. So they're gonna be like this. So I think we're gonna have to, the diffuser will have to be shortened a bit, but other than that, I don't think there will be any issues. So I think the motor is gonna fit very nice in there. So yeah, I think that's about it. Next to do is to rebuild this model in Lego Digital Designer, and from there on I will first modify it in on the computer, see if everything fits, and then we're gonna rebuild it into the motorized version. So last time we made a motorized version in the Lego Digital Designer, and meanwhile we ordered the extra parts. So we have the parts here, and these are the parts that will go into the model for motorization. Of course, we will also make the proper instructions and everything for this specific model. And basically, today we are gonna take apart the original and rebuild it into the motorized model. So first we have the teardown of the original. So now we are mostly done with the front suspension, which has been redesigned to have a much larger steering angle, so we can test, and you can see that the steering angle is really high. It's almost 45 degrees on the inner side, so this will give our model the ability to drift and steer much tighter than the original, of course. Okay, and now we're slowly building towards the rear suspension. Okay, so the rear suspension is more or less done. So we have suspension, we have drive, and we have the fake engine, which still needs to be fixed a bit better, but it works. And now I'm gonna connect the front and rear together. So now we have a chassis. We are gonna try and complete the model. So the chassis is more or less done. We have a working steering. You can see the steering wheel works, and we have the rear-wheel drive and the fake engine. So now basically I just have to put everything back together. So let's start. Okay, so the car is more or less finished. So all I have to do is charge the BuWizz bricks and set up the program and the profile, and we can start testing it. Now the car is quite heavier than before. I think it should be around 400 grams heavier. I will check later. And it's quite lower than before. You can see that the front wheels are almost touching the bodywork, but there is still some suspension action in the front and of course in the rear. So the car is much lower than before, so it should look a bit nicer. And of course the steering angle has been increased. As you can see, this is now like almost 45 degrees, so that should give the car ability to spin out and drift and power slide quite easy. So join us next time when we actually test drive the model.